Hello everyone, welcome to this video. And in this video, I'm going to share about the tension which has occurred between the Iran and the United States. So, diplomatic and analytical overview, I would like to share it with you. The relationship between Iran and the United States in 2026 remains one of the most strategically significant bilateral dynamics in the global politics, shaped by decades of rivalry, negotiation, and regional competition. The interaction between Iran and the United States continues to influence global security, energy markets, diplomacy, and geopolitical alignments. Now, I would like to share about the historical context, a relationship of complexity. Since the 1979 Iranian Revolution, diplomatic relations have been formally severed. Tensions have fluctuated between confrontation and cautious engagement. A pivotal moment came with the 2015 nuclear agreement, formerly known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. The deal aimed to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanctions relief. The US withdrawal in 2018 significantly altered the diplomatic landscape, leading to renewed sanctions and increased tensions. The history shows that while distrust runs deep, negotiation channels have repeatedly proven possible even during peak tensions. 2026 diplomatic landscape. By 2026, relations can be characterized by strategic containment and deterrence. The US continues sanctions, pressure, and regional security cooperation. Iran advances regional influence through alliances and asymmetric capabilities. While formal diplomatic ties remains absent, communication often occurs via European intermediaries, regional actors such as Oman and the Qatar, and multilateral forums. Even indirect dialogues reduces miscalculation risks and keep a diplomatic pathways open. Energy and the global markets, the Iran holds some of the world's largest oil and gas reserves. Any thaw or escalation directly have a critical impact on this, like the global oil prices, shipping routes like the Strait of Hormuz, energy security in Europe and Asia. Now the regional influence, key theaters includes Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen. The US maintains a strong regional partnerships, notably with the Israel and the Saudi Arabia. Iran, meanwhile, emphasizes strategic depth through allied networks. Nuclear diplomacy and the security calculus are one of the factors in which the nuclear issue remains the central diplomatic pillar. Core concerns in the 2026, and it include uranium enrichment levels, IAEA monitoring access, sanctions relief mechanisms, and regional security guarantee. Despite hardened rhetoric, historical precedent shows nuclear diplomacy remains technically solvable when political will aligns. Neither side benefits from open military conflict. The cost, economic, political, and human, would be immense. Even rivals share overlapping interests: stability in Afghanistan, anti-ISIS counterterrorism, maritime security, avoiding full-scale regional war. These limited shared objectives create space for pragmatic coordination. Domestic political influences in both countries, internal political dynamics strongly shape policies. In Iran, balancing economic pressures, public expectations, and strategic independence. In the United States, congressional influence, electoral politics, and alliance management. Diplomacy is not conducted in isolation. Domestic legitimacy plays a central role. Optimistic scenario, the gradual confidence building measures leading to limited sanctions relief, then it is leading to nuclear freeze arrangement, and then it is leading to de-escalations. Continued sanctions and deterrence, but controlled tensions without major escalation. Escalatory spiral, the regional incident leading to military retaliation, and then it is leading to broader confrontation. Managed rivalry with intermittent diplomatic engagement. Why this relationship matters globally? The Iran US dynamic affects global oil supply stability, Middle Eastern geopolitical alignment, US China strategic balance, nuclear non proliferation norms. It is not just a bilateral issue, it is a global stability variable. Despite decades of tension, history demonstrates negotiation has occurred before back-channel diplomacy works. Strategic patience can prevent conflict. Great powers often move through cycles of confrontation and recalibration. The enduring lesson from Iran-US relations is this: even the most entrenched rivalries can evolve when strategic realism meets diplomatic opportunity. Iran versus United States, a strategic outlook, military balance, sanctions, impact, and the public opinion. Geopolitical risk forecasts, overall risk level, moderate, high, but contained. The relationship between Iran and the United States is expected to remain adversarial but strategically restrained through 2030. Most likely scenario, it's approximately 50 to 60% managed rivalry, continued sanctions plus deterrence posture, indirect nuclear diplomacy, proxy level tensions without full scale war, occasional maritime or cyber incidents, economic constraints in Iran, US focus on Asia Pacific competition, war fatigue in the region. Secondary scenario that is around 25 to 30%, that is diplomatic breakthrough, limited nuclear freeze agreement, incremental sanctions relief, regional de-escalation talks. This would resemble a partial revival of principles from the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, though likely narrower and more phased. Now, the high risk scenarios are approximately 15 to 20% escalatory spiral, maritime clash in the Strait of Hormuz, Israeli Iranian confrontation, drawing in the US, miscalculation involving regional militias. Neither side seeks full war. Escalation risk stems more from accidents and proxies than direct intent. Now, the strategic asymmetry. The US dominates conventionally. Iran compensates with ballistic missiles, drone warfare, naval swarm tactics, regional military networks. Iran's doctrine focuses on deterrence by denial and retaliation, not the conventional dominance. Economic sanctions impact the breakdown. Sanctions remain the core US leverage tool. Now, its impact on the Iran are restricted oil exports, limited access to SWIFT or the global banking, currency volatility, inflation pressure, constrained foreign investment. Yet Iran has adapted through sanctions, aviation networks, regional trade corridors, energy exports to Asia, domestic industrial substitution. Now the impact on the US are minimal macroeconomic effect, higher regional security costs, diplomatic friction with the allies, energy market volatility when tensions get spikes, sanctions degrade but rarely collapse state capacity. They shape behavior slowly, not immediately. Public opinion analysis and its trend are about Iran. The public attitudes are complex, strong nationalism, skepticism towards US policy, significant pro engagement sentiment among the youth, economics concern often outweigh ideological hostility. Younger demographics favor economic normalization more than confrontation. Now, for the United States, public attitudes and the tend towards low appetite for Middle East war, support for preventing nuclear weaponization, preference for diplomacy over invasion, limited emotional engagement compared to other global priorities. Iran is viewed more as a strategic challenge than an immediate existential threat. Strategic stability assessment. Stabilizing factors are war fatigue, economic pressure constraints, back channel communications, global energy interdependence. Now, the destabilizing factors are proxy escalation, Israeli Iran flashpoints, domestic political shifts, nuclear threshold ambiguity, long term structural outlook. By 2030, the relationship will likely resemble one of three archetypes: cold rivalry with rules, most probable, limited deterrent, regionalized conflict contained below major war. A complete normalization is unlikely without structural political shifts in both capitals. Now, the big picture: the Iran US dynamic is not simple hostility, it is a calibrated strategic competition shaped by deterrence, logic, economic leverage, and regional chessboard maneuvering. The defining theme of 2026 to 2030 will likely be restrained under rivalry, not reconciliation, not the war. Now, the current diplomatic status: indirect negotiations, strategic patience, and regional restraint. The diplomatic channel between Iran and the United States remains open, though not face to face. In 2026, talks continue indirectly, focused primarily on Iran's nuclear program and the balance between enrichment limits and sanctions relief. While formal relations remain suspended, the current phase reflects measured engagement rather than escalation, a sign that strategic realism is prevailing over confrontation. Indirect negotiations, quiet but active. Diplomacy is taking place through intermediaries, including European and regional actors. This approach allows both sides to reduce public political pressure, explore compromise without immediate commitment, prevent miscalculation during periods of tension. Though slower than direct talks, indirect diplomacy has historically helped reduce crisis risk. The very existence of negotiations, however indirect, signals that neither side sees escalation as beneficial. Now, the US position, enrichment limits, and its monitoring. The United States seeks caps on uranium enrichment levels, expanded monitoring by international inspectors, longer breakout time safeguards, verification mechanisms that ensure transparency. Washington's goal is not regime change through talks, but nuclear containment and regional stability. The diplomatic reference point remains the principles established under the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Through current discussions are narrower and more phased. Iran's position, sanctions relief, and economic access. Iran's central request is clear: meaningful sanctions relief, access to frozen financial assets, restoration of oil export flexibility, reconnection to global financial systems. Tehran argues that nuclear constraints must be matched with tangible economic benefits. Iran seeks economic normalization. The US seeks nuclear limitation. The negotiation challenge lies in sequencing and trust building. Regional powers encouraging restraint. Key Middle Eastern states are actively supporting de escalation. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Oman have encouraged diplomatic pathways and quiet mediation. Regional actors recognizes that energy markets depend on stability. Shipping lanes must remain secure. A wider conflict would affect all economies. Unlike previous years, regional diplomacy now favors stabilization over polarization. Why this moment matters? The current dynamic reflects three encouraging realities. Both sides prefer negotiation to military confrontation. Regional actors support diplomatic containment. Incremental agreements remain impossible. Rather than dramatic breakthroughs, the 2026 approach emphasizes gradual confidence building, small steps that reduce risk and preserve future options. Now, strategic outlook. This phase is not reconciliation, but it is responsible statecraft. In an era of global uncertainty, the willingness of Iran and the United States to keep diplomatic channels open demonstrates a shared understanding. Strategic patience often achieves what confrontation cannot. Military and political context, deterrence, discipline, and the balance between pressure and diplomacy. The strategic environment between United States and Iran is defined by heightened military visibility but also sustained diplomatic communication. The situation reflects a careful balance, strong deterrence paired with open negotiation channels, increased US regional military positioning. The United States has reinforced its posture across the Middle East through naval deployments in the Persian Gulf, air defense systems, and rotational air assets, enhanced coordination with regional partners. This positioning serves three primary objectives: protect maritime trade routes, deter escalation by signaling readiness, reassure regional allies. Importantly, deterrence in this context is not preparation for immediate war. It is a stabilizing signal intended to prevent miscalculation. Iran's defensive posture. Iran maintains that its military doctrine is defensive and deterrence based. Its strategy emphasizes missile capability as a counterbalance, drone and asymmetric naval operations, regional strategic depth. Tehran's approach centers on raising the cost of direct confrontation, thereby discouraging large scale conflict. From Iran's perspective, visible US deployments are matched by domestic preparedness, creating a dynamic of mutual caution. Strong rhetoric, open channels, public rhetoric on both sides remains firm. Statements are often directed towards domestic audiences and regional partners. Yet behind the rhetoric, indirect negotiations continues, intermediary channels remain active, crisis communication pathways are intact. History shows that strong public messaging does not preclude private pragmatism. In fact, firmness often provides political space for compromise. Now, the persistent risk of miscalculation. Despite restraint, risk remain maritime incidents in congested waterways, actions by non-state actors or regional proxies, cyber operations or limited strikes triggering retaliation. The key danger is not deliberate war but unintended escalation. Encouragingly, both capitals understanding this risk, that shared awareness is itself a stabilizing factor. The strategic reality of 2026, this moment is defined by three simultaneous truths. Military readiness is elevated, political rhetoric is strong, diplomatic talks remains open. Rather than contradiction, this represents modern deterrence diplomacy, pressure designed to prevent war while creating leverage for the negotiation. The current posture reflects disciplined statecraft on both sides. The United States signals resolve while avoiding provocation. Iran signals deterrence while avoiding direct confrontation. Regional actors encourage stability. The overarching theme is clear: strength without escalation, competition without collapse, and dialogue despite distrust. In a region historically marked by volatility, the continuation of talks, even amid military positioning, is not weakness, it is strategic maturity. Oil market reaction and key events, how diplomacy and security signals shape energy prices. The oil market remains one of the most immediate indicators of geopolitical tension, especially when developments involve Iran and the United States. The chart reflects a clear pattern. Markets respond not just to conflict but expectations. Price trend snapshot. Now, this snapshot states about a October, prices of around $82 per barrel. November, $85 uh, when the talks resume. December, $83 when the diplomatic stabilization. January, $88 military reports get surfaced out. February, $92 heightened diplomatic tension. So this chart basically states about the scenarios at the different instances. This upward trajectory highlights how energy market price in risk perception, not just physical supply disruptions. Talks resume will lead to controlled optimism. When indirect negotiations resumed, prices initially rose modestly. And why? Markets anticipated possible sanctions adjustments. Traders factored in potential future supply shifts. Optimism was cautious, not exuberant. Even positive diplomacy can cause price movement due to uncertainty about future output, sorry, levels. Temporary stabilization. As rhetoric cooled and no immediate disruption occurred, prices dipped slightly. Traders reduced short-term risk premiums. Market confidence briefly improved. This shows the stabilizing power of dialogue. Military reports, that is correlating to the risk premium surge. Reports of increased regional military positioning triggered. Rapid price increased speculation over Strait of Hormuz security, insurance and shipping cost concerns. Markets react quickly to any threat to maritime transit routes. Diplomatic tension intensifies. With a strong rhetoric and uncertainty about negotiations, prices climbed towards $90 plus. Investors hedged against potential escalation. Volatility increased across energy futures market. Yet, importantly, there was no supply shock, only geopolitical signaling. And why this matters globally? Oil markets influence inflation rates worldwide, transportation and food costs, central bank monetary policy, emerging market stability. The Middle East remains central to global energy flows, making diplomacy between Iran and the US a global economic variable, not just a regional issue. Now, the positive perspectives are despite price fluctuations, no physical supply disruption occurred. Shipping lanes remained operational. Diplomatic channels stayed open. Corrections remained orderly. This indicates resilience in both energy infrastructure and diplomatic risk management. Oil markets are forward looking. They respond to the signals, statements, posture, and perceived probabilities. The trend suggests managed tension, not uncontrolled crisis. The rise towards $92 reflects precaution, not the panic. Energy markets today are more adaptive than in previous decades. Strategic reserves, diversified supply chains, and real-time data reduces shock severity. The ongoing dialogue between Iran and the United States, despite tensions, acts as a stabilizing anchor for the global markets. Volatility signals vigilance, stability signals maturity. The current trajectory reflects both. Global economic implications, energy volatility, inflation pressures, and strategic stability. Tensions involving Iran and the United States extend far beyond regional politics. Their diplomatic and military signaling directly influences global energy markets and through them inflation, trade balances, and financial stability worldwide. Now, oil remains a foundational input in the global economy. Transportation, manufacturing, agriculture, power generation. When prices fluctuate, fuel costs rise. Shipping becomes more expensive. Food prices can increase. Consumer inflation accelerates. Even moderate oil volatility can complicate central bank policy decisions in major economies. Markets react not only to supply disruptions but to perceived risk. Expectations alone can move prices before any physical shortage occurs. Energy importing nations are under pressure. Countries heavily dependent on imported energy, particularly in Asia, Europe, and parts of Africa, faces higher import bills, currency pressure, wider trade deficits, physical strain from fuel subsidies for developing economies. Sustained oil increases can slow growth and increase debt vulnerability. Yet, diversification strategies are advancing. Expanded LNG infrastructure, renewable energy investments, strategic petroleum reserves, regional energy partnerships. This transition enhances resilience over time. Markets reacting to diplomatic signals. Financial markets are highly sensitive to geopolitical cues. Diplomatic progress leading to reduced risk premium, military escalation, rhetoric leading to price spikes, maritime security concerns leading to insurance and freight cost increases, traders price in probability, not certainty. This makes diplomacy itself an economic stabilizer. The continuation of negotiations, even indirect, helps moderate extreme volatility by signaling restraint. The strategic significance of the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most critical maritime choke points. Approximately one-fifth of global oil shipments passes through this narrow corridor. Its importance lies in energy supply continuity, global shipping insurance rates, strategic naval presence, investor confidence. Even minor disruptions or perceived threats can ripple across the global markets. Despite volatility, no sustained supply interruption has occurred. Energy infrastructure remains operational. Diplomatic channels remains active. Markets, while reactive, remain orderly. Global systems today are more diversified and technologically advanced than in previous decades. Strategic reserves, supply chain flexibility, and alternative energy growth provides stabilizing buffers. Now, the strategic takeaway from this is the Iran and the US dynamic in 2026 underscores a broader truth. Geopolitics and economics are inseparable but equally important. Restraint in diplomacy translates directly into economic stability. The presence of a dialogue, even amid rivalry, reduces the likelihood of severe disruption. In a highly interconnected world, measured statecraft benefits not only the region but the global economy at the large. Possible diplomatic outcomes, breakthrough, stalemate, or escalation, what the future could hold as indirect negotiations continues between Iran and the United States. Three broad diplomatic trajectories emerges. Each carries distinct implications for global stability, energy markets, and regional security. The defining themes are outcomes will sh- shape not just bilateral ties but global economic confidence, sanctions relief, and strategic stability. A diplomatic breakthrough would likely include agreed limits on uranium enrichment, enhanced international monitoring, phased sanctions relief, gradual economic reintegration. Now their impact are increased Iranian oil exports, reduced global oil risk premium, strengthened non-proliferation norms, lower regional military tension. Even a limited agreement can produce outsized stability effects. Markets respond quickly, confidence and regional actors would benefit from reduced uncertainty. This path would not resolve all disputes, but it would establish guardrails that reduces crisis probability. Now the statement scenario are managed rivalry and continued volatility. Under stalemate, talks continue intermittently. No comprehensive deal is reached. Sanctions remain largely intact. Military posturing persists. Moderate oil price fluctuations, periodic diplomatic friction, controlled but persistent regional tension. A stalemate is not failure, it can be a holding pattern that prevents escalation while preserving leverage for both sides. History has shown that extended diplomatic pauses sometimes precede eventual breakthroughs. Now, the escalation scenario, the regional instability and economic shock waves. Escalation could stem from maritime incidents, proxy confrontations, miscalculation amid heightened rhetoric. Now, their impacts are oil price spikes, shipping disruptions, heightened military engagement, global inflationary pressure. However, escalation remains the least strategically rational outcome. Both capitals understand the economic and security costs of uncontrolled conflict. The presence of ongoing dialogue, however indirect, tilts probabilities away from escalation. Pre-encouraging signals stand out. Neither side seeks full-scale war. Regional actors encourage restraint. Economic realities favor stability. The diplomatic environment in 2026 reflects competitive caution rather than confrontation. Diplomacy between rivals is rarely dramatic. It advances incrementally through patience and calibrated signaling. The most likely path forward is neither triumph nor collapse, but steady management of risk. And in global geopolitics, sometimes the greatest achievement is not a headline breakthrough, it is the quiet prevention of crisis. Now, in this section, I would like to share the conclusion. Diplomacy as the central path forward. In the evolving relationship between the Iran and the United States, one reality stands out clearly. Diplomacy remains the most powerful and sustainable path forward. Despite strong military positioning and strategic rivalry, communication channels remains open. That alone is significant. Indirect negotiations to continue. Regional actors encourage restraint. Neither side seeks uncontrolled escalation. This demonstrates a shared understanding. Long term stability cannot be achieved through pressure alone, but through calibrated negotiation. Balancing pressure and engagement. Modern statecraft requires balance. Pressure creates leverage, negotiation creates solutions. The current dynamic reflects both. Strategic deterrence is present, but so is diplomatic patience. This dual track approach reduces the likelihood of miscalculation while preserving space for compromise. Strength and dialogue are not opposites, they are complementary tools of responsible leadership. Now, if we talk about the global markets, which is watching, financial markets, energy traders, and policymakers worldwide closely monitor every diplomatic signal. Oil prices respond to rhetoric, inflation trends react to energy stability, investor confidence shifts to with geopolitical tone. The global economy is interconnected. Stability in one corridor can influence prosperity across continents. Encouragingly, markets have remained reactive but orderly. This reflects confidence that diplomacy remains viable. Maybe the upcoming months are quite critical. The near term holds particular importance. Negotiation momentum must be sustained. Crisis management channels must remain active. Confidence building measures can shift expectations. Small steps now can prevent large crises later. History shows that pivotal moments often unfold quietly, not in dramatic headlines, but in disciplined dialogue. The defining feature of 2026 is not escalation, it is restraint under pressure. Military readiness has not translated into conflict. Strong rhetoric has not closed diplomatic doors. Economic volatility has not become systematic crisis. This reflects maturity in crisis management and awareness of global consequences. In a complex and competitive world, diplomacy is not weakness, it is strategic wisdom. As the months ahead unfold, the continued balance between firmness and flexibility will determine whether tension transforms into progress. The global community is watching not for confrontation but for leadership. And leadership at its highest level is measured not by the conflicts but by the crisis prevented. So thank you everyone for watching this video. If you find that there are improvement, if you find that you need some clarity, or if you have any questions, then please mention it in the comment section. And it's my request to please like and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video. Thank you. Bye bye.